Minister Tharman, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. The global economy seems to be stuck in a rut. You have low growth, high unemployment. You, as the IMFC Chair, you made a call to action now, new policy momentum. What does that really mean?
Well, first let's acknowledge the positives, because there's been real progress since the financial crisis. The US, which is the largest of the advanced economies, a very important source of demand for everyone, including us in Asia, is clearly in recovery. And then the lower income countries, in fact the lowest income countries, are showing a vibrance that wasn't there previously. So there's some real positives. But overall, we are only halfway through this journey of recovering from the crisis. The Eurozone is barely recovered. We're facing new financial risks at the same time, which we have to focus very closely on. And we, very importantly, face the risk of a prolonged period of subpar growth, or what the Managing Director, Ms. Lagarde, has called a new mediocre. It's a very real risk. The question is, never treat a risk as a given. Never treat it as something preordained. We identify the risks in order to avoid them. And that's the whole point of our discussions. And there are ways of avoiding this risk of a prolonged period of subpar growth.
During the meetings, we heard a lot of officials, both from advanced and emerging markets, talk about new ways to achieve new growth. And they all said that structural reforms is a key. But with structural reforms, it's very hard to implement sometimes, and the benefits come much later, at the medium term. How do you mobilize policymakers to act now?
Right. Well, first, I think it's misplaced to think that structural reforms only pay off over the medium to long term. Our real problem today is a lack of confidence over the medium to long term. And that lack of confidence inhibits today's activity and today's growth. Consumers and businesses may not be perfectly rational actors, but they do look to the future. And if they're worried about the future, they curb their spending today. They curb their investments, they curb their consumption. So if we want to get out of today's problems, we have to address tomorrow's problems today. And if we do that, we lift confidence, and we should see some improvement even in the short term. And there are lots of examples. If you look at Spain, in fact, it's quite interesting how structural reforms in the labor market and in some other areas has had a very quick transmission into today's growth. It's a very good example. Mexico is another classic example of how structural reforms didn't require them to go through a very long period of retrenchment or a long downturn before they finally got the light at the end of the tunnel. So structural reforms address the critical gap that we see in the world today, which is confidence and trust. And by bringing confidence and trust back into consumers, businesses, the public at large, we have the best chance of getting out of today's rut.
What would be your one key takeaway from these annual meetings?
That we know what needs to be done, and we need to do it. And doing it is something that requires political courage, but most importantly, it involves changing the political narrative. When we talk about labor market reforms, it's not a great sacrifice that populations need to make. It's a way of creating jobs for the young, for women, and sometimes for minorities. Is that politically unattractive? Going against vested interests doesn't mean going against the majority. It means you're uplifting possibilities for a whole majority, and particularly your younger people.
Thank you very much, Minister Tharman.
Thank you.